What up, young slumlords and ladies? This is Jake Lapp, and welcome to the Young Slumlords podcast, where me and Caleb Henshaw talk our shiz and hopefully help spark the idea for finding your financial independence in this paycheck-to-paycheck world. What's up, everybody? We wanted to originally have one of our guests on, but as celebrating a new offer accepted, we wanted to kind of break down this deal and some of the tactics that we're using in the market right now that worked for me. Wanted to get kind of into the numbers and get into detail on some of the future stuff that we're looking to get into. So
congrats on getting your offer accepted, man.
Yeah,
That's
thank
cool.
you, brother. It was super exciting. It was a hectic week, that I saw this place a few times. They originally listed it in the beginning of May, so not super long ago, but a month ago, and we all know how the market is right now. If there's a good deal, it's eaten up in a few days. So it was originally listed for $260. The listing agent did not do her due diligence. There was no pictures of the property, just a picture of the front of the house, which is honestly like the worst part of the house. The porch needs a lot of work and, not a ton of work, but that's like one of the eyesores of the whole property is what she advertised. So it was listed improperly. They said that it was two bed, 1 bath units. And so it was listed for $260. 2 weeks later, they dropped the price to $235. 1 week later, they dropped the price to $220. Now at that point, $220 for a duplex, two bed, 1 baths, a 2 bed, 1 bath in Quakertown, as we know, can easily rent for $1,200. Some would say more, with the market now, rents have been kind of going up, but staying conservative, we know $1,200 works. And, by saying that, $1,200 and $1,200, $2,400, the 1% rule, at $220, it hits that, beats it a little bit.
And you had Dylan run the numbers too, and your monthly expenses, super high estimates were way under that.
Right. They were way under the total, but at the same time, with us living there, the goal has been to live free somewhere. So I wanted the one to cover. So if I was getting $1,200, I was like, okay, well, I would need my monthly payment under $1,200. And at $220, it was kind of on the fence there. His estimate was actually over. I think his closing cost estimate for me was $45,000, and
The cash
to close. So that I would have to do 15% down, owner occupant, because it's not my first one, but it's still less than the 30% for an investment property, which is today's going rate, is what I've been hearing. It used to be 25, and now I think banks are getting more stringent on strictly investment properties. So 15% down with all the closing costs. 15% of 220 is 33, 32, something like that. And then the rest were closing costs. So there's a lot of closing costs. Prepaids as well, like all the escrowed property taxes and insurance and stuff like that. That's all a part of the closing costs as well. It was that, and I think my monthly payment was like $1,230 something. So I was like, okay, this is a good deal. I'd like to get a better deal. I call up the listing agent and I want to schedule a time to see it. So both units are occupied, and she tells me that there's also a garage in the back, which she didn't have listed, which adds another $100 a month to the cash flow. And in that case, it actually makes the numbers work at $220. So I was like, okay, cool. So I wanted to set this thing up, and so we go and see it. And I guess other investors have been having a hard time scheduling a time because there was no lockbox. The listing agent didn't have a lockbox. Like, you had to coordinate it with the tenant's schedule, when they were going to be home, blah, blah, blah. And I guess that didn't work out for a lot of people, because I think if anyone else really saw this place, it would have been gone. So I got in, and like I said, the first thing I saw was the curb. That was a bummer. The curb is a slate rock that they just shoved in sideways and made the curb, probably when Quakertown became Quakertown.
Yeah, it's super old, super old fashioned. We just looked at it an hour ago, and it's like a night and day difference between that curb and like a concrete curb. But like we looked up and down like the neighboring houses, and some people like put some concrete on top of there. So it like kind of blended it in. So I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Right. And like the only thing that scares me about it at some spots, it's like at least 6 inches above the sidewalk. So which like now that's a tripping hazard. You know, when you're looking at houses, the sidewalk and walkway are important. You know, if someone trips on your sidewalk, you're liable. It was definitely a consideration, and I was like, okay. But I do think based on seeing the neighbors, I really think I can just like cut it in half and like put concrete over it. Like it's literally what they all did. And if the township's cool with it, so am I. That was the first thing. We get on the front deck, and, you know, there's some loose boards, tons of peeling paint, you know, nothing crazy. I love painting. Just kidding. But I do a lot of painting. And I think I'd probably go the plastic capping route on this for at least the top part. You know, I'd scrape all the paint off and put some plastic. I don't even know what you'd call that. It's like
the banisters between the pillars, replacing those pieces.
Oh, yeah. So I would redo those in vinyl, but then like the actual ceiling of the porch, how my porch in Souderton is.
Oh, yeah.
It makes a big difference, and it's not that expensive, and you never have to paint it again. So I'm looking that way. I actually just ran into a guy doing some window capping in Souderton this weekend, and I pulled over and I was like, hey, how much you charge to do this? And he was like, well, we're doing like everything at this house. This is a pretty big job. And he was like, what do you need? And I was like, you know, it's just some windows to get capped. And he was like, I'll do them $100 a window. That includes material. And I was like, dude, that's a sweet deal. So got his number, and we might be using him at this place. We'll see. But I've definitely heard some mixed feelings about capping over wood, because the reality is now you just can't see the wood. Mm-hmm. The wood can be rotting away behind there forever until it's like a serious problem. Like,
but you can't see it though.
But if you can't see it, it doesn't matter. And that's
that's all that matters.
That's all that matters. So I'm not really sure. I think no matter what, I would paint them once. I did that at Souderton. I scraped them and painted them. And then to put capping over that, at least it has that extra layer of
and it would
protection.
last so much longer too, without direct sunlight.
For sure. So that's my thoughts there. So that was our first impression. You know, okay, this place is going to be a dump, but you get what you pay for. So we walk into the first floor that they have listed as a 2-bed, 1-bath, and you go in, and it's in great shape. The walls are nice. They're a nice color. It still has the original wood trim, wood crown molding. Everything is in really good shape. The carpet, the flooring, everything checks out. I'm like, all right, this is weird. So they called it a 2-bed, 1-bath, but it's really a 1-bed, 1-bath with 2 living rooms. So it's a kind of funky layout. And if I were listing it, I would call it a big 1-bed, 1-bath, because that's what it is. You know, you have 2 identical sized living rooms that, like, you know, one is the living room, the other can be dining room, office space, you know, whatever it is. And then a nice little kitchen. They actually had a weird country sink. I think that's what you call it, a farm sink or something. Like a big, heavy, like, I don't even know, like
Cauldron?
Porcelain. Like it's like a huge, just like a giant sink. But it's on like legs, like a table, 4 legs. And it's sitting over top of the radiator, which like looks super strange. So
it's like the old-fashioned way of, I guess, like getting hot water at your sink, I guess.
I don't think someone else said that, and I don't think that was the actual purpose. I think it was more of like, so we could have a big sink and not block the radiator.
Interesting.
But it's actually a really cool sink. I don't know if it fits amazing in this kitchen, but I feel like it's definitely trending with what a lot of people are liking in their forever houses. So I'm stoked about that. She had like a little card table in the middle of the kitchen because there's not a ton of counter space. And Kale was like, you know, we get this. We're going to get like a nice island to put in the middle there. And we started looking at some, and the place is going to look sweet. The bathroom was fine. We went into the basement, and the ceilings were low. It was like 5-foot ceilings, maybe a little taller, but it was short compared to our current basement, but with a lot of these old houses, it's pretty normal. I know Caleb struggles with all basements.
Yeah, I was gonna say mine's 5'10", and it's still like it's like 6 inches too short for me. So.
Yeah. So we get down there, and there's 2 brand new gas boilers. So, and there were still the oil tanks down there. So I was a little confused, but the oil tanks were disconnected. They ran natural gas in from the street, tied in. There's 2 meters, 2 brand new furnaces that do all their heating, and tenants pay for their own heating and gas. So that was huge. 2 separate circuit breakers. I didn't see any knob and tube wiring. All great signs. There was actually a sub pump in the basement as well. In the seller's disclosure, they had asked if there had ever been flooding, and they said that the basement used to get water, so we installed a sump pump. And
I think I saw the outlet in the backyard when we were looking earlier.
Yeah.
It was just like a straight vertical outlet. Like the water was just coming out of like it wasn't like a tube like you normally see that's horizontal. It was just straight up. And it was just flow. It had a grate on top of the water, which was flowing out of it straight up. It was super weird.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out. That's funny though. But yeah, so, and then it had 2 hookups for washer and dryers. So like that was something that I was like, this basement kind of sucks, but that's the point of basements. Like, especially.
Was it a concrete floor or mud?
It was concrete. So, but it was still like the thing with old houses that like a lot of people don't get. Like a lot of people are like, oh no, like my basement's wet in the corners, or whatever, it holds moisture. It's like,
so it's supposed to do.
That's exactly what they're supposed to do. So like I wasn't sweating it, but at the same time, not a great spot to do your laundry. It's a big part of a lot of people's weeks and stuff, and like having to hunch down and fit into this little spot to do your laundry sucks. So one of my plans is to definitely run some lines up and make both in-unit washer and dryers. So that was the first unit. That's where we would claim residency. Unfortunately, we're going to have to be giving someone the boot. That was a part of my offer. So
he was too scared to do it himself, so he had to get the seller to do it.
True. And yeah, no, that's pretty much it. So, but yeah, we'll get into that later. So we went upstairs then, and I'm like, wow, that was actually really nice. Like, this top 2 bed has to be tiny or something. Like, there's got to be something off. And we go up, and it's the same exact thing. The same paint, the same trim, the same carpet. Like, everything's in good condition. You walk up, big living room that they have kind of the dining room and living room together. A smaller kitchen, but who cares? It's not like a tiny kitchen. It's just not a big kitchen. And then a walkout, like enclosed, screened in 2nd floor porch. So that was cool. Big bathroom and 2 really big bedrooms all on the 2nd floor. And I was like, okay, like this is a nice 2-bed, 1-bath unit. And I'm like, okay, the 3rd floor, I'm assuming, is just the attic. Open the door, and it's carpeted, it's drywalled, there's electrical, and there's two bedrooms right on the 3rd floor, like ready to go. The current tenants aren't using it because their family's not big enough to need 2 more bedrooms. So 2 more huge bedrooms and a 3rd door up on the top that goes to like an unfinished attic. I'm just looking at everything, and the second that we walk in to the attic, I tell Dan that Dan's been listening. He's a friend of Caleb's, and he hit me up. He's getting his real estate license, and I was like, dude, we're going to see a house. Like, if you want some exposure to open houses, I can show you kind of what I look for and stuff. So he came with me. But this first thing I said to him was like, dude, this is a bathroom. And because it's right above the 2nd floor kitchen. So I know that the plumbing's there, and then just running up in the wall, it won't be too crazy to add what I'm hoping to do, and we'll see how it works out, but to add another bathroom and the washer and dryer all up on the 3rd floor. So what my estimates are after the research I did on, Rentometer, apartments.com, Facebook Marketplace, like, I have 3 units in Quakertown. I know the market pretty well, but I wanted to, make sure what I was thinking was accurate, and for a 4-bed, 1-bath, like if I didn't do the in-house laundry, didn't add the bathroom, I was estimating like $1,500-$1,600 a month. If I had a bathroom and in-house laundry, I think it's going to be closer to $2,000 a month, $1,900, $2,000. So for, pulling a couple permits, because I would pull permits for that, and, so like maybe $5,000, probably less, to get an additional, what was that, $400 or $500 a month, like worth it all day. So I'm leaving there, and then we saw the garage too. It's the house is a twin, so the garage is a twin as well. So I'm leaving. I'm like, okay, the first bed is really nice. The 1-bed, 1-bath is really nice. We could definitely get $1,100 a month when we leave there. So $1,100 for that. For the 4-bed, 2-bath, $2,000. For the garage, another $100. That brings it to $3,200 if we add the bathroom. If we don't, if we just rented it for $1,500, saved that project for another day, it would still be $2,700 a month. So, we talk about the 1% rule and everything like that, and it's like this definitely exceeds the 1% rule. And, my cash on cash, what I was looking at off of 220, the main thing was like the down payment. Like it was a big down payment, $45,000. I was like, I'd like to get that lower and get my monthly payments under $1,200. So I was like, I called the listing agent afterwards, and I was like, hey, I'm interested, probably going to be submitting an offer. Are your sellers flexible? And she was like, yeah. And so I'm like,
best listing agent ever.
Right. She showed all her cards, and to go even further than that, she was like, yeah, if you can do settlement by July. Oh no, so this didn't happen yet. So she said, yes, definitely flexible. Just send us an offer. I said, okay. So I wrote up an offer for $200,000, and so currently it's listed at $220,000. So my offer was $200,000 with a 6% seller assist, which is the max seller assist you can do in that range. I think it's between 10 to 20% down. That's like the maximum seller assist you can ask. So 6% seller assist off of $200,000 is $12,000 towards those closing costs that I said earlier were closer to $13,000. So they would essentially totally wipe them out. So then I'd only be putting 15% of 200, which is $30,000, and that would be it. So I was like, okay, that changes everything. That looks really good. I wrote it up. I had a couple. I still had it dependent on an inspection, contingent on an inspection. I waived everything else.
No appraisal.
So the appraisal is making it's like separate from the other contingencies. It's like, is this offer contingent on buyer obtaining financing? So like that is including that it appraises, because in order to get financing, it has to appraise. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was also contingent on the appraisal and me obtaining financing. So
I guess you kind of have to have it that way if you're getting conventional financing.
Some people, like with all this stuff, people waiving things, like
you just got to pay the difference out of pocket.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, if my offer was 200 and it appraised at 180, I didn't elect this, I would have to pay that difference. If you elect it, then you have the choice to back out. Normally, if it appraises low, either you're going to get another appraisal, or the seller's got to...
You got to negotiate a little more. Yeah. Be like, hey, this is coming in a little low, bud.
Right. Like, it's not worth what you think it's worth. I'm not going to give you the money for it, but a lot of people do.
This one guy says it's worth less than you say, so...
Right. So I had that, and I had it contingent on the seller giving the downstairs tenant a 60-day notice as soon as possible, but no later than July 1st. So this was, just a few days ago. And when I talked to my lender, he said that, okay, yeah, we can do settlement July 23rd. We'll have your mortgage commitment by the 9th. So I sent all this in, and contingent on them giving the 60-day notice, because that also, the 60-day notice also helps me a little bit, because this is a little bit early from my year of claiming residency at Souderton, which it's not like a hard year, really. We've talked about that before. It's not this, 12 months, 365 days.
There's no timer.
Right. So it's just, did you live there? Were you planning on living there? Blah, blah, blah. So we did, but this will actually push us past that year. And we actually have tenants lined up for the apartment that mid-September is when it's ideal for them. So it kind of works out for everything.
And the extra time, if it all works out, you could use that to fix up the front of it as well. So that way it looks nice, so that we don't have to worry about doing that after you fix the inside to post all your pictures and stuff. Right.
I submit the offer. I know the sellers are older. I submitted it at like Friday night at like 9 o'clock. And I'm just like, holding my breath until, I don't even remember, Saturday, late Saturday. And the listing agent calls me and it's like, hey, could you do July 9th for settlement? My sellers are trying to accomplish a 1031. July 9th is their latest. If they don't sell by then, they will not take this low of an offer. But if you can make it happen by July 9th, they're countering at 208 purchase price and a 4.5% seller assist. And I was like, deal, you got it. And, so I call up my lender, Dylan, and I'm just like, hey, this whole deal is contingent on you guys, putting it in double time and getting this done by July 9th. If there's extra fees associated or whatever it is, like, it's worth it to us. I really appreciate it. And he was like, we got you. So title company's good, lenders, everyone's on board. And yeah, so that's the deal.
Yeah, shout out to Dylan.
Shout out to Dylan. He made the whole thing happen. And so I'm super stoked. We have the inspection tomorrow. Excited to see what I didn't see and honestly hear his input on the curb and see if his thoughts are.
I can already see it already in the report, like the big red, like safety hazard, whatever.
Yeah.
Like tripping hazard, vehicle hazard, big time.
Right. And I mean, because I still have the inspection contingency, I still have 1.5% that I can.
I can't believe they told you that it's going to be a 1031.
I know.
Because you could totally nickel and dime them.
Right.
If you think about it, the reason you're doing a 1031 is so that you can defer your taxes to the next deal that revenue gets rolled into. So you sell this property, you don't got to pay the capital gains on it. So that tax percentage could be a massive amount of money that a few grand in the sale price isn't going to make too much of a difference.
Right.
Versus them losing out on the whole deal and then having to go through the whole process again without a 1031.
Right. So I've never sold a house, so I'm not 100% on how the capital gains work, but I'm pretty sure it's just on the excess that you made on your house. So if I bought a house for $80,000, which they bought the house for $80,000 in 1998, and they sell it for $200,000, now they pay that capital gains tax, which I think right now is around 25%, 23% maybe, and they pay that on the difference.
We need to talk to a CPA though on that for sure.
That's what I'm not sure, but that's my guess. And what I'm thinking is, so 23% of 120 is, $30,000. So in my head, I'm kind of like, dude, if you just listed this right, you could get way more than $30,000.
Well, I mean, we're consistently seeing places that would get less revenue, much less revenue, for well over $120,000 more than what they're asking. $350,000 all day.
Right.
All over in worse areas.
Right.
We just saw a place is that East Greenville that had less. It was two one beds for $350,000.
The worst deal we've ever seen.
Yeah.
Because we were talking about what we're going to put on the podcast, and it's been consistent now with all three of my deals. They've all been on the market over a month at least. And
yeah, we were thinking of just trimming, going back, finding old stuff that you may have forgotten about that you looked at it, you're maybe it's not it doesn't look that good. even though, and then you just went on to the next property you're looking at, run your numbers on, but like it's still there. You know, it's
Right.
still on the MLS, or like go back and check, like, oh, like it's still here. Maybe we can like wiggle this down a little bit. We looked, and they're all still terrible deals,
Right.
like on the market still. Like there's a reason no one bought them.
Right. So, but it's funny because we're talking about this. We're talking our negotiation skills. We're talking never split the difference. All these tactics and like getting, as investors, getting the best deal. And in a hot market like this, it flusters people because you have no power as a buyer in day one of a house coming up.
Absolutely.
There's not a single thing that you can say to a seller day one that's like, hey, you know what? I'll give you $50,000 less than you think this place is worth. Like you have to let the market tell someone that it's not worth what it's worth.
Unless like you saw something, like you're an expert in something, like, and there's like a massive safety hazard, like barring that, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
Other than that, like, oh, like I don't like the way this room is shaped. Be like, okay, then leave.
Yeah, right.
You know?
So what basically I'm saying is like the only way that you gain any of that power in the negotiation or in the making the deal work, like it has to sit.
Yeah, it just takes time.
It takes time. So like this market's been hard. Like it's not like these have been flying up and everyone's like, oh, Jake, I'm so glad you said that because there's all these deals back there. Like me and Caleb went through it and we went to the second oldest in our search criteria, and it's like this crappy duplex in East Greenville that is like literally needs to be gutted. And
it's
they're asking $350,000.
Yeah.
Like East Greenville, the rents are the worst, like out of a lot of places. Like not great, but not terrible. And it literally needed so much work. This place,
the whole house is just wood paneling and drop ceilings and like ancient carpet. Like everything would have to be ripped out of this place, and it's just like
it'd be worth $120,000. And even then, I'd be like, that's kind of a far drive to manage that. I don't know if I want it. So.
Maybe you could, like, there is always the opportunity, like they just forgot that they had it listed. You know what I mean? Like at this, like it's been on for so long for that price. Like most people, if they're motivated, do what they did with your situation where they kept dropping the price, which puts it to the top of the criteria every time the price gets dropped.
Do you know what's the worst though? When people drop it like 1,000.
Yeah, that's
2,000.
big scam.
It's like, dude, come on. But anyway, so we made it happen, or the numbers broke down with the 208 purchase price, 15% down, 4.5% seller assist, and it ended up being, what is that? 35,000 all in. So I'm stoked with it. My monthly payment's going to be $1,171 with the PMI because I didn't put 20% down. You want to know what my PMI was? $19 a month. So like, well, yeah, anyone who thinks that they need 20% down, we've told you a million times, but here's another one, like $20 a month.
Well, yeah. Think about the PMI though on the FHA deals. We were running calculations on those. Now that's a killer. That was like $300 a month.
$350. Yeah, dude, those things were no joke. So,
but the conventional though, if you get the conventional loan, your PMI is super manageable. You know, barring your credit isn't under like 680.
Right. So yeah, the monthly payments $1,170. We broke it down even $3,000, like meet at the middle. Our cash on cash with this, even factoring in 25% for CapEx, maintenance, reserves, doing all that stuff, it was still like 34%.
That's 38.
38.
Yeah, from the numbers you told me last night. So like that's
killer deal.
Like less than 3 years of payback, you know, having it fully rented. So it'd probably be like what, like 4 years with you living there, and then maybe less than that, 3 and some change.
Yeah.
So yeah, crazy good deal. That like we saw that deal, like that was sitting on the market for some time. We're constantly scrolling through. We looked at it. We're like, there must be something terribly wrong with this place because there's no pictures. And it's listed pretty high. It started at what, like 280? You said it was for
260.
260. So,
and 260 would have been a good deal for this place.
Yeah, true.
If they put pictures up and said it was a 4-bed, 1-bath, it would have sold for 260. I feel pretty confident in saying that. I could be
just
misguided.
from the numbers we
Right.
ran through, 100%, it would definitely, like, again, we're looking at places that would make like almost half as much money listed for almost double. Mm-hmm. So it's like,
right,
this listing agent really screwed the sellers,
right,
big time.
And so this is an experiment. I want everyone to listen to this, and we'll keep you updated in a couple weeks when I get the appraisal back. But I think appraisals are such scams, and they'll literally. I had this conversation with another agent, pretty recently, and he had a really good take on that I want to share. But what I was gonna say is, like, if this appraises for anything under 220, they're literally just justifying your purchase price. Like, that's the purpose of an appraiser, is to say, okay, yes, bank, it's worth at least this. But when people get their appraisal back and they're like, oh my goodness, it's $5,000 over, I've got this great deal, or it's never that. It's just a rough guess that they're saying, okay, bank, like, it's worth this.
Well, like, we had Susie Truax on, who's a realtor in 4 states, and she said exactly that. In all her deals, it's always coming in and asking. Like, whatever you're asking, the appraiser's going to walk in, check some boxes and be like, yeah, it's close enough. It's good. So I think it mainly exists because of, like, the 2005, 6, 7, like, run up of, like, houses going for $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 over, like, what the market was, like, how fast
that's
that
kind of
ballooned. It's not going that fast now,
right,
but, like, it's fast, but, like, not that fast, maybe.
Right.
So
but the guy that I was talking to, he was saying, because I was like, guy, none of these appraisals mean anything. I feel like it's the biggest scam. How are people actually getting approved for going 50,000 over asking, 30,000 over asking, 100,000 over asking? How are they supporting that claim? And he was like, well, the thing is, all it takes is one cash buyer to put in an offer over asking, because all of a sudden that's a comp. Someone who didn't need financing can pay whatever they want for whatever they want.
Yep.
And the second that they do that,
all the houses around them are now worth more.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Or less, yeah.
Which is it made sense to me, because as long as that comp was there for one other person to get approved on a hot house, now there's 2 houses, and then there's 3, and then it made it click in my head that it was like, okay,
that's how it happens.
That's why these people are getting approved. Which, I don't know, I thought was interesting.
Yeah, because you have, like, the hard money lenders giving money out to these people who are buying a house just to refi into a conventional loan, so they can skip that whole, like, be super competitive on the front end, and then once they have time to slow down and then start working with banks to get the financing, that whole, like, just domino effect starts of, like, all the houses in the neighborhood now being worth so much more because, they were 100 over asking.
I thought that was wild, and I actually wanted to get your take, because, all we've been hearing for the last year is this hot market, this seller's market that ends at a point, especially when it's not this, like, false thing. Like, it's not like they're just approving anybody. The approval settings are so much stricter, and we still have this amount of buyers, but it's like, I feel like, based on other podcasts I've been listening to and just, like, being on Zillow, I'm seeing a lot more listings and a lot more stuff lasting longer. I think we're getting to that point where everyone and their mother knows it's a good time to sell, and now our buyer pool is going down a little bit.
There's, like, I mean, at least just from our area of multifamilies, there are a lot of places available,
right,
still for sale,
right,
and, like, granted, they're all just bad deals,
right.
So,
and I mean, I'm not talking multifamily, because multifamily isn't what moves the market the way that it does.
Yeah, like, you've seen, like, the news stories about, like, the huge investment firms going after the single families, and, like, how it's, like, such a good investment for them over the long term, and, like, that can definitely, but, like, there's so many houses though that, like, they say, like, they were all up in arms because this company bought a neighborhood.
Right.
And it's like we had a guest on who bought a neighborhood.
Right.
You know, it's like that just happened. There's a lot of neighborhoods.
Right. And it's funny that you bring that up. My cousin, Matt, shout out Matt, I'm sure he's listening. He works in government, and, you know, he hit me up and he was like, dude, like, what's your take on this? And he sent me that link of, you know, pension firm jacking up the rates, paying cash for houses above asking, you know, and like just this like fear mongering post. And I read through it, and I had seen on a lot of other forums this has been brought up, and I think the water. Caleb just typed in black water on this.
Is it Black Rock or Black Water? I don't remember the company.
Anyway, whatever it is, the people are saying it's like at a high end 6% of single family houses are being bought by large groups, like investment groups. And it's like, I told my cousin, I was like, look, that is a really good investment to go in and buy a neighborhood. If I had the money to go buy a neighborhood, if I was a syndicator and I'm pulling money from all these investors and I'm like, hey, we could just go into this neighborhood and buy everything a little bit over asking, but then we have the total control over the rental market and literally control over everything there. That's a fantastic move.
Yeah, I mean, long term, like even like Warren Buffett, like decades ago, was saying like single family real estate is an amazing long term investment strategy just because of like how fundamental it is. Like, just it's always going to be there. Like, it's always going to be making money. Like, people always need a place to live. Seeing the surprise of companies buying single family houses as an investment is surprising to me, that people are surprised that they're doing it.
Right.
Because it's like, well, why would they not? You know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
Like, what else are they going to buy? Like stocks?
Right.
Like, they're probably already doing that too. You know, they got
right.
they got a little bit of everything. So
Yeah.
it seems like a no-brainer for big companies to invest in real estate. And like most companies do. If you've got a store with retail front property, like they're real estate investors. Like,
Right.
unless of course they're renting, but that's like a terrible deal. Somebody I knew who was at one point the president of Acme, like the grocery store, and he was telling me the story about how their like real estate ventures, like they would build those strip malls where their stores would be, and then they would rent out all the other neighboring stores they built, which would pay for the whole thing. So like their real estate bill, like their rent bill or whatever, was like zero or net positive. Mm-hmm. So it's like, you know, anybody can leverage real estate to make money. Like, you don't have to be an individual. Like, businesses are doing this constantly too. So it's just, again, surprising that people are surprised.
Right. Yeah. No, it is surprising. It's such a, you know, for the majority of Americans, it's their biggest investment that they ever make in their entire lives. And for a lot of them, it creates significant wealth if it's in a good area and it appreciated, like,
or the opposite.
You know, it's a no-brainer that a large company would buy houses. It doesn't even.
Everyone's buying houses right now. There's like a supply shortage with, seems like, with everything. So like, I don't think, I mean, it's just a matter of time till we like actually like things start settling down. But I'm hoping things settle down fast, because like I'm still trying to like set myself up for a new deal coming up soon. I'm not trying to be paying crazy prices, but like as you just found yourself, you know, people can still mess up and sell a great house for a good deal.
I really
in
think
crazy times.
I think we're at the tip.
This
is my crystal ball. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling at least within the next 4 months, we're going to start seeing this influx of houses on the market for the first time, because we've had the same, like, so if you think about it, there's this limited pool of buyers, right? We have these super strict guidelines. We have this amount of buyers, and everyone starts buying. Everyone wants out of the city. Everyone starts buying in the suburbs, blah, 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 getting out. There's a point where there's not as many, and the people that are there are either looking for a super niche thing, but like it goes back to a semi-normal market at some point. It's not just shoot to the moon forever. You know, a lot of people are buying right now. Like, you know, I think we're at the peak, and it's like, oh yeah, Jake just bought at the peak, but it's like numbers related. I did not. At the same time, just based on what I've seen, like the listings that have been coming up every day that I'm seeing, like it's more than before, and I'm seeing more things sit, and that just.
This is also locality based as
Right.
well. So like
Right.
you're seeing like your market and your area, if it's the complete opposite, we're just seeing from what we see on our filters for our area and stuff. So
Right.
it could be completely different. And, I'm pretty sure it's like the more high value areas are the first ones like to act in those situations, like San Francisco, New York City, like those are the first ones for the trends to start. And then that like reverberates into all of the neighboring markets. But who knows? We'll have to wait and see what happens here. But
I think you're gonna find his killer deal.
yeah, I'm sure I will. Fingers
So.
crossed. And so going on, we were talking a little bit about like new ways to invest in more than just one house in a year, because like with the current house hacking strategy, you have to claim the residency and live there. But how do you get into another deal without having to put that $30K down? And, one of the options, of course, is something we brought up before, which is like the vacation home 10% down loan. And that, brings up the question of like, you don't always have to be there. You have to use it as a vacation home, but
2 weeks out of the year.
2 weeks out of the year, which opens the door to.
And you can't have long-term tenants. Like those are like the main rules. The income doesn't count towards your debt to income ratio when qualifying for the loan. So it's like, when you're getting a multifamily and you're assuming that you're going to get income from the units, they take that into consideration when you're buying the house, and it helps your debt to income. With this, it does not.
Yeah.
It's like you have to be able to afford this at a 45% debt to income, the monthly payment.
It makes sense because the whole point of it is like for your vacation home, and they're like, they're not going to lock you down and they'll ban you from renting, but they're not going to like allow you to, count the income to help afford the house. Like,
right.
That just makes sense.
Right.
And like, not allowing long-term rentals just opens the door to only allowing short-term rentals. So then we start talking about Airbnbs, and then, where do you go for Airbnbs? And like, it seems like the beach areas are like,
pretty saturated
in our area, at least. Like that's like the best place to be. And then it's about finding an affordable market that still has a high saturation for Airbnb vacancy rates. And
it's really, what I'm seeing is just a pour over of the very desirable spots.
Yeah.
Like if you find somewhere that a lot of people want to go to Airbnbs at, you can just expand your search and move out a little bit.
Yeah, just go a little bit outside of it, yeah.
And there's some deals to be had in some of these spots that we're starting to look at, and it's like...
Well, I mean, think about the cost. Like, we both Airbnb'd, and it's super expensive in those nice areas. Like, I paid like well over $350 a night at some places. Yeah, like right on the boardwalk, like on the beach, like on a super high rise, like condo. And it was like super nice. The place was awesome. If I wanted to stay there more than 2 nights, like just the weekends, that's a lot of money. So like if I could move out a little bit, like 10 minutes from the beach and only spend, $150 that's like a little bit more desirable. So like that's kind of like what we're talking about here is like not in the prime, unless you can afford it, of course. From the deals we're seeing like $1 million properties on the beach and stuff like.
So when we went down to this area, my buddy was showing me around. Shout out JD. He brought me to his buddy's house, who his dad's a builder in the area. It has like this beautiful, like a 20-foot deep swimming pool with a like rock wall on the side, slide. Like the rock wall is like 15 feet tall, so you can jump off that into the 20-foot swimming pool. It's like pizza oven, like just gorgeous setup out back. We stopped over just because he wanted to show it to me, and I start talking to the owner, and he's like, guess how much this is renting for the July 4th weekend? And I was like, I don't know, what, like 10 grand? $25,000 for July 4th week.
Holy crap.
25,000. And then he said that his rate for June, July, and August is $2,800 a day.
Woo.
A day.
Wow.
And it's not right on the beach. It's just got a really dope swimming pool.
Wow.
Seriously. And like I think it's got like 15 bedrooms or something. Like it's a big house. But
I mean, that's like where your either really rich families go, or like multiple rich families pull up money together and all go together.
Even that, like with 15 bedrooms, if you have 6 like decent sized families all split that up, $24,000, $4,000 for a beach week isn't that crazy. Like, I don't know. I was talking to him about like some of the stuff that we've been doing, and he's just like, dude, if I would have, we've had this house for 15 years. If I would have started doing this 5 years ago, I wouldn't be working anymore. Like, this is his first year doing it.
Wow.
But it was super.
Wait, they kept it for themselves?
Yeah.
Wow.
Like, this has been their house.
Oh, wow. So they're missing out on that much money.
Right.
Just living there.
So they made
crazy.
Like a big apartment on top of their garage on the same property. So like
when
that's rented, they just go over there.
Wow.
It's crazy.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
No,
So,
but like what we're looking at is like much smaller places.
Yeah.
Like considerably like square footage in like the hundreds, not the thousands
Right.
or the millions. But
yeah. So it's there's just a lot that goes into running the numbers. You know what I mean? Like, so
there's a ton more variables involved, because like what we're used to now with long-term rentals is like, here's your keys. When something breaks, give me a call. You know, you only got to deal with turnovers, you know, the risk of a turnover once a year, you know, normally. And then, you know, if that, but like with this, it's like like that is part of the equation, is the constant hands-on management. So then you got to start looking at not only the distance to the place, but then the consistent management of the place. So it's, you have to outsource. You have like, we're talking like cleaning people, maintenance / handymen, and landscapers for lawn care.
Yep.
And those are like the three big things you need to have on deck, because if anything happens, you know, we're in the middle of a work day, something comes up, we can't just drive like an hour and a half, 2 hours to the beach house to go fix a leaky sink.
right.
You know, you got to have somebody ready to go. So like that's when things get really like hairy with running the numbers. So you kind of you have to guess high and then hope for the best that it's lower than that. So
right. So the number one out of the most important person in that is the cleaning person.
big time.
Like someone that's consistent, does their thing every time, and creates that recyclable outcome. Like every time,
Yeah,
you
like
can
the
expect
consistency
this.
is there, where like you can just send the text of the time and the date of like when, you know, they're leaving, so they can be in that time window to clean it, to have it ready for the next tenant coming in. And like, can you imagine walking into an Airbnb and having it like gross?
Right.
Like,
Oh, I've been into plenty.
Yeah.
The cheapest Airbnb, you just said you spent $350 for a night. I spent $15 a night in Kentucky in a shared bedroom.
Wow.
There's probably
was it Craig
no, it was not Craig. It was
in Colorado?
but it was a beautiful house. And I like looked at the real estate there. They bought this place for like between $10,000 and $20,000. They had 3 bedrooms in a house.
Wow.
Renting out all 3 bedrooms for $15 a night, $45 a night times, you know, whatever. You're making some good money on it if it's rented. I was working in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky, and that was what was there. But still,
The only Airbnb there.
right. Yeah. So, but no, it's
And it was gross.
that one wasn't. But I've stayed in some really gross ones.
The whole thing, like the headache of the Airbnb is like, it's supposed to be super nice most of the time, you know, unless you're in Kentucky spending $15 a night, but like it's supposed to be nice. It's your vacation most of the time. There's some people who will give you a real hard time if it's not like pristine, and they'll give you a bad rating, and that sticks with you on your reputation on Airbnb. And then you got to deal with that for a long time and go back and forth, get refunds. And it's just like so much of a headache that it's just really important to get a good set of people that you can depend on to be consistent, to keep it clean, keep everything functional, and like make it look nice. It's really easy. It's like an easy thing to say, you know, like, but then like actually doing that, like finding the people, having them do the work, getting the bad reviews, trying to find new people to do the work. And then like from what our guest Susie, who was experienced in Airbnb, was saying, was that the amount of people available to work in these areas we're looking in is super low. So the demand is very high for these workers, but there's a very short supply of them. So they can kind of pick and choose,
Right.
and charge a lot of money.
Right. And I think in this specific place, I have a semi advantage just because I have 2 friends there that have lived there their whole lives and know everyone. So there's like a little bit more to it where I'm like, if they trust them, I trust them.
Yeah, you're not like a complete like straight. You're not
Exactly.
like alone out there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and I tried selling them on the becoming my property managers for a pretty good fee, and they
no.
turned it down, and I would have too. That it is a headache, but I really think if to have the right people in place, the numbers work. And I wanted to kind of get into the pricing on how I was like determining the cash on cash and stuff, because it's not just 12 times a year you're getting paid. You're especially in a beach town. There's some really hot months. There's some really cold months. There's a lot of variables. So there's actually a website called airdna.co, and you can type in whatever town, and they will give you vacancy rate, average daily, like the average cost per house, who uses Airbnb, who uses VRBO, how many people have 2-night minimums, how many people have 5-day minimums, how many people, like, what they look into, and they show a map of all of the Airbnbs or like all the short-term vacation rentals in that specific town, and you can click on all of them, and they'll show you how many nights they were listed, what their occupancy rate was, what their average nightly thing was. So I was able to, because if you want all the details, you got to pay for it. But based off all the free details I got, because I would not spend $300 to make $1 million. Based on that and like running the numbers that way, I was like, okay, so April. Oh, and I reached out to every single Airbnb host in the town I typed up the same message for each one. I was just like, hey, actually not looking to rent this. I'm looking at buying in the area and wanting to connect with other hosts. I have some long-term rentals in PA, but I'm new to the short-term rentals. If you ever have a couple minutes or would be willing to talk, here's my number. And then Airbnb blocked my number. So then I had to, had to
do like the Craigslist style, like type out the numbers and the letters for your numbers.
That's exactly what I did.
Classic.
So out of that, I think I reached out to like 12 people, and 2 people said no thanks. 3 people reached back out to me and were like, yeah, like I'd love to talk. And then a couple more people said, here's my website. You can see more of our details on our website and get my contact information from there. So I talked to a couple people and like really picked their brains and was like, how much are you charging a night in these months? How much are you charging a night in these months? What's your vacancy rate like in the winter? Are you keeping it open in the winter? Some people, they just winterize their houses so they don't pay the utilities for the winter and don't go down there. Some people keep them open and have a couple, So I really got a ton of data, brought it back, and was like, okay, I'm going to be really conservative. This amount a night for like the highest amount, $250 a night for June, July, and August. Then $160 a night for April, May, September, and October at a 60% occupancy. And then for all the other months, $100 a night, 20% occupancy. So like,
just decrease the amount per month it's going to be,
and
decrease the amount of like time you're renting it out.
Right.
Based on, and that's just purely to calculate or to help estimate how much downtime there's going to be in the slower months versus the busier months, because we're talking the beach here and it's the East Coast, so it gets cold.
Right.
It gets real cold.
But when I talked to these guys, I was so surprised. And Susie said it herself in her market. She was talking about like, a lot of people will do Christmas there. A lot of people are doing Thanksgivings. They're having random bookings in January. Like, there's still people, like, we did it.
Yeah.
We went and we stayed a weekend in, I think it was January or February at the beach, just because it was cheaper and we were able to have a couple friends and go to the beach in the winter. It was fun.
Yeah, it's not like it's never going to happen. It's just going to be a lot less than, the summer months. So
right.
Trying to like find that equation pretty much to best estimate it. I feel like you would need a ton of data. I mean, I feel like the only people who can actually accurately calculate that are Airbnb themselves, but they're not sharing that sweet data with anybody. Imagine if Airbnb started like just Airbnb-ing, you know what I mean? Like they have all the data.
Right.
I'm
sure they do.
Yeah, they probably do. They got some rat hole companies, some shell companies. They're just
absolutely. But yeah, so then I was taking all that because a lot of people, like, you look at the beach rental and you're like, oh man, like, you're making this much a night, like, that's crazy. But then you got to take into account there's a mortgage that's due every single month. Like, so I took all those conservative numbers, added them up, divided them by 12. So it's not like, oh, in July we're killing it.
Yep.
It's like July is just making sure that in January we can afford the mortgage. And it ended up breaking down to, it was good, but it wasn't like this crazy home run deal. But at the same time, it's like, we got a beach house. Mm-hmm. And it was funny though. I was talking about like us actually using it because for me, I wouldn't want to spend $2,100 to go to the beach for a weekend. But for us to go to the place that we own and lose $2,100,
yeah,
it's pretty much the same thing. It's like what you're saying, the loss aversion.
Yeah.
And like,
you wouldn't ever use it because you would technically be costing yourself a tenant for the weekend or whatever.
Right. And I think what your idea was just like go on the fly, like, oh, we're going this weekend because it's not booked.
Yep. And you would just be like super last minute.
Right. Like, and then we'd have to really clean it up nice because we're not paying a cleaning fee.
Hell no.
So, no, it's just been something we've been kicking around because, like, with that 10% down, it would be feasible still this year. And I don't know. I'd definitely like to talk to some more Airbnb folks. So if anyone's listening and has a beach house that they put on Airbnb, I want to talk to you about it.
Yeah. No, getting more data is always helpful. Like, especially with the numbers, like I think the most important thing to have is just like the actual like calculated vacancy of like what your revenue is expected to be. Like, are you actually decreasing your rates in the slower months, or are you just keeping them the same and then just getting less people? Like, does that make a difference? Decreasing the numbers, do other people do that? So like just all that little pieces of information, like that stuff's super important. And the other things that like we hadn't really talked about with Airbnb is like, you think about it, like you're spending, let's say this house is, $200,000. Mm-hmm. You're putting 10% down plus closing costs. That's $20K plus probably another 10. So you're $30K out of pocket plus whatever it costs to fix it up. Let's say all in $35,000. Mm-hmm. You're betting $35,000 that you can count on pretty much one company to be there to fill your pipeline of short-term tenants.
So
or two if you count Verbo, but like who uses Verbo,
So I kind of think that, and so I joined all of the Airbnb groups on Facebook just because it's something I want to learn about. So I want to be exposed to the people doing it and blah, blah, blah. So I joined all these groups, and what a lot of people are doing is building their brand, building their own website, building their own booking service. So now,
they're cutting out the middleman.
They're cutting out Airbnb, but they're reliant on Airbnb
for like the main funnel, like the main, like the whole like Airbnb has the brand, like we're better than hotels. We can get you in houses that are better than hotels in areas that, you wouldn't be able to get a hotel room in. So like, that's their brand is massive already. And it's like, just people are just coming in like crazy. So like if you lost that for whatever reason, like say for example Airbnb just bans you, that's been happening on like these big, like these companies are have the ability to ban you. Like Facebook can ban you for whatever they want. Yeah. That is always a risk with these. It's not like America where you have rights. This is a private organization. So like if that happens, and then Verbo does the same thing, you're kind of stuck. Of course, you could sell it, you're not stuck with it forever, but it's like, that is a risk that you are betting $35,000 that a company you have no control over will be able to consistently feed you leads, to get short-term tenants.
And
they provide you the system of payments
right.
and advertising and everything. Because like that, what you were mentioning of building your brand, doing your own listings and like taking payments, that's expensive. Like to build that whole system and manage it and maintain it, from a technical background, like, you'll be paying some money for that for sure.
And but the thing is, like, short-term rentals didn't become short-term rentals when Airbnb came around.
It's like mainstream.
It's been a thing.
Yeah.
And it got totally blown up by Airbnb.
It was a convenience factor.
Exactly. And I'm not really concerned with if Airbnb goes out, someone will take its spot because there's a demand. Like Airbnb is not doing bad. So if I'm not really concerned with the funnel, because if anything, things get in the trend of technology better, more convenient.
If Airbnb, in one scenario folds, more companies come in, then you get a competitive scene.
Right.
The other option is you get banned by Airbnb, then you're kind of just like, all right, I'll just.
Well, then you just don't get banned by Airbnb.
Yeah, just
follow the rules.
Yeah.
But so my biggest concern, which I was running to in Delaware, I was running into in the markets I was looking at in Florida, is like, these places where you can still find an affordable house are banning Airbnb. They're not grandfathering in Airbnbs. So, like, you could buy a place and 2 months later, they're like, hey,
no more.
This is no longer a thing.
Yep.
You can no longer do this. And
that's a much more like...
That scares the shit out of me.
Written down here right in front of me and I didn't even read it, but that's a much more like viable outcome for like a risk is just the local government being like, the long-term rental market is just getting totally jacked because of the short-term rental here. No one can afford a place. Our teachers, our firefighters, our whatever, no one can live in town anymore because
of all you douchebag investors.
All the douchebag investors buying up all the houses and charging $300 a night to live there. And it's like, we can't have that anymore. Like, we have people driving 2 hours to their jobs now. So like, we're banning it outright.
But at the same time, you're seeing these, slums turning into vibrant, beautiful communities. Yeah. Like, people are these Airbnb people
is real,
are making it so nice, and it's increasing the value of everyone who already owns there, but it's screwing the people who do not.
Yeah. Well, like, think about it. Like, in that town specifically you're talking about, like, imagine if all the people who work there had to live like super far inland and drive hours like over those bridges to get in. You know what I mean? Like, that would suck. Like, that would suck and like just the long-term effects that would have on the community if no one from the community was in the community. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was just all these people like recycling in every weekend. It's just like a new slew of people here. And it's just like, that's just weird.
It is weird. It's a really weird concept because it's like, I understand people banning it.
Yeah.
It makes sense. And
I think it has to be like just like controlled. Like, hitting it with the ban hammer seems a little harsh, but like, I guess limiting it to like certain
local
areas.
residents. That's what Delaware did. The only way you could own a short-term rental, and you could only rent your short-term rental for not to exceed 30 days out of the year.
Whoa.
And you have to live in Delaware to do that. So like, that was like, oh yeah, if there's a big event, oh, you want to make a couple grand on Labor Day weekend? Oh, but then it's kind of like, dude, I own this. How can you tell me that I can't?
Yeah, get somebody in. Yeah.
I can't have my relatives come visit me and pay. They pay. It's like, it gets weird to the point like, the government should not be allowed to tell me what I'm allowed to do with my house.
I thought this was America.
Right.
You know what I mean? Then that comes into the equation as well, for sure. And like, I guess I think it really affects like those beach towns, especially just because of how much demand there is for it and how limited real estate there is.
It's like, dude, just get over it. You grew up in paradise. Go move to PA where it's cold and shitty all the time. Like, just
deal with it.
Deal with it.
Yep.
Let the investors come and buy it up.
Buy your own Airbnb.
Or buy your own Airbnb.
Yep.
Start house hacking. Start a business.
Listen to
passive
the podcast.
income. Yeah. Start listening to the Young Slumlord podcast. But
just one last point I had thought of for Airbnb was that we don't have any data, like historical data on like a real market recession affecting the widespread short-term rental market. We do have like localized short-term rental markets. Like people with experience have talked about like how, you know, from their experience, their local short-term before Airbnb was a thing, their short-term rentals didn't get affected by the '08
They
crash.
got better.
Yeah, they got better. But like we're talking like a global change in the last, 5-10 years for Airbnb.
But some people would consider what we just went through a recession, even though we both know that it wasn't. But it was for some people. It was for a lot, especially these beach towns like this.
Oh, like the Trump bucks getting pumped in, the stimmies getting pumped in.
At the same time, like I was down in this area where like a lot of the jobs, it's a tourist town. A lot of people just work based in the service industries, and all of them were closed. Yeah. All the restaurants were closed. All the bars were closed. That was like a ton of people.
Anybody relying on tips definitely got the short end of the stick, for sure.
So like a mild recession for a big percentage, like not a huge percentage, but a significant percentage. It wasn't like this. It wasn't as big of a deal as everyone was making. I don't think in general, like as big of a deal as everyone made it, but it wasn't non-existent either. It was definitely an actual recession. And again, like when things are getting tough, especially like things you can't control, what they were saying in 2008 was more people were escaping to short-term rentals. But I don't know.
That was a localized area though. Like that was very small.
Right.
Like data set compared to like we're talking like the whole country is full of these things, like everywhere.
Right, which it wasn't. Yeah. There wasn't 100 in every single town.
Yeah,
all over the country. So, it's messed up, dude. I told you, I've been on these Airbnb forums, and like there is so many people doing Airbnb arbitrage. I want to talk about that for a second because it's funny. Jordan actually hit me up about this like a couple months ago or like a couple weeks ago. He was like, "Yo, what if I just rented a spot and Airbnb'd it out?" And I was like, I mean, you can.
You totally can.
But it's like, and these people like are showing me lists of like just got my 100th unit, just got my 400th unit. And it's like, they're just signing leases, agreeing to like maybe pay a little bit more in rent than what the asking rate is. And being like, hey, like, I'm not going to live here. I'm going to manage it. You're going to get paid this every month. And like, if someone said that to me, said they would pay more a month for rent, I'd definitely consider it.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it with Airbnb, like we said, you've got to keep it clean. You got to keep it looking nice. And if it's in like a nice area, like it's going to have to like look like it belongs. So like if you can get a market rent for it and your tenant is just doing a lot of work, having a lot of people in and out, maybe you can get a little bit more than market rent for them. But from what we saw with our numbers, it wasn't like astronomical. Like,
what do you mean?
The yearly revenue from Airbnb.
Right. But like just to think about doing something, like getting into the space with no money.
Yeah.
Like you literally just have the down payment requirement from the landlord. Like if you can rent an apartment, you can do Airbnb arbitrage.
Like first, last security on like a single family house in like a nice area. And then I guess you got to have like money to stage it. Like you need furniture in there. Like these Airbnb guests aren't bringing furniture.
Right.
So,
which, we furnished houses off the curb. You know what I mean?
You need mattresses. Those are
off
sketchy
the curb,
things.
Dog. You just put some. Dude, I'm telling you, I've been in some crappy Airbnbs. But no, seriously, because then it's like you break down the numbers, and if you like create your business, it is not an easy thing. It's doesn't have nearly the benefits of owning your own real estate. But at the same time, there's a lot of things that you don't need to worry about. You don't need to worry about the roof and the HVAC. Like that's still your landlord's responsibility.
I think it's like, if you're going to go that route, I would like rather just stick with condos.
Oh, for sure.
Like that would just be the smarter move at the end of the day because you own it. Versus like with a landlord, they could just like say like, "Oh, you're violating the lease or whatever." Then
you get it in writing. Some of these people are doing probably a lot of them are doing it under the books. Like, but a lot of people
what I've seen.
Like presenting this opportunity to landlords. Like, hey, the most you can get market rent is this. I can make more money renting it out daily. I will do the cleaning. I will keep up with the guests. I will make sure nothing gets broken. If anything's broken, I will fix it. You get more money, I can make some money.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, sure, some landlords might put in their head like, well, maybe I should just put it on Airbnb. But a lot of landlords don't want that work.
You're saying?
Yeah, like a lot of people don't want that headache, but some people do and can make the most of it. So it was just an interesting topic that I've heard about a bunch of times, but never really thought about too much until recently. And it's like
it's not like a no money down investment strategy unless you could somehow like find a landlord who doesn't require first last security.
Right, but I'd consider first last and security the closest thing to no money down. Like you can take out a bunch of high interest credit card, you know what I mean? Like you can make that work with no money down. You can get a couple grand.
Think about it though, like say a 3-2, 3 beds, 2 bath, single family house that you can pick up for, let's say like $2,000 a month you're paying for rent. First last security is $6,000, and then once you get in there, you got to furnish the place. Let's say you do that for $1,000, furnish the whole place, make it looking nice, $7,000. You pull that out on a credit card, like it's gonna take you a lot longer to pay that back with the Airbnb revenue than like you would eventually. Like if you put that on a credit card, your 28% interest rate would ramp that puppy up.
But a lot of them don't start for a few months at least. So now you have.
But you're not going to make $7,000 that fast, though. Like maybe in the year, maybe.
I don't know, because you have to do it in a market that makes sense. If you're just
because you're paying them that $2,000 every month,
right?
So then your revenue would have to be well over that,
right? And it depends on the market. Like like I said, there's houses and stuff that are going $2,800 a night.
Yeah,
like if you can find the right market that it works, like. It's definitely not undoable is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, it's definitely not impossible. It's just like very risky to like not be in control over the actual like property.
Oh yeah. Like I wouldn't personally, I wouldn't do it. And I'm not telling anyone listening to do it, but it was an interesting thing and it might be something worth looking into. It seems like a lot of people with, suits on in their profile picture and sunglasses that are
trading futures.
Yeah, the selling their book on how to become a billionaire, and
Yep.
But there's got to be some truth to it, and I think
if you're doing it like under the table without your landlord knowing, that's super sketchy. So like I definitely wouldn't go about it that way for sure.
Absolutely. So yeah. Something just that we've been kicking around and wanted to talk about. And the last thing had some landlording to do this week. I get a text in the morning from Jordan. It's a video and it's like a bunch of ants and like flying around like in his apartment at the windowsill. And I'm like, oh no. And he sends a picture, like zoomed in, of them like coming out of the wood windowsill. And I'm like, oh my God. So I start like trying to identify the bug first. Like he was up in the middle of the night and saw this like swarm. And then when he came back in the morning, they were all gone. So termites don't like the sun. They live underground. They're subterranean. They work at night. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I literally have a termite infestation in one of my houses. That sucks. Like
time to hang it up.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I guess I'm just
for me.
I'm gonna work till I'm 65. That's
you're gonna go rent a house now.
Yeah, right. So I'm like, okay. And my first thought is, all right, now I gotta do all the research, figure out what bug this is, find out what chemicals work, figure out how to get them out. I'm like, the framing's all going to be shot. I got to reframe this duplex. And then I think Kayla said to me, she's like, just call an exterminator. And I was like,
a guy.
Oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. Like I don't need to be the bug expert. There is one of them. So I call this guy and he comes over that day and it was carpenter ants. So, and he told me because we had talked on the phone, he was like, if it's termites, because the duplex you have is on a slab, it is honestly kind of conducive for termites. They're like 150 feet below ground is where they nest, and then they come up, and like tunnel up through a crack in the slab and start eating the wood. It's like crazy. They have these like swarms that come out this time of year, and it's like part of their colony that like goes out and like exposes themselves to find the wood. It's like they're actually really interesting.
But I gotta read about termites. That sounds pretty crazy.
It is crazy, and like they make these like mud tubes like through everything. Like it's how they travel, and they actually eat the wood. Like they're eating the wood and building the tubes with their poos or whatever. Super weird. And so he's like, yeah, if it's termites, we inject this stuff into the ground. It's like a super serious treatment, and it's $2,500, and there will be no termites for at least 15 years. And I was like, that's actually not that bad. But I was still like, $2,500, that's a big chunk of change. But like to not have to worry about termites for 15 years. I wasn't worried about termites at all. So it was like $2,500 still sucks.
For nothing.
Right. So I'm like, dang, that stinks, but whatever. And he was like, but based on the video you sent me, I would lean more towards carpenter ants. I was like, what do you do for carpenter ants? And he's like, we spray the place, come back, and we come back quarterly. And then at the end of the year, the goal is to have your structure like off their radar. So like us coming back every 3 months for a year, well now like that's a no-go zone.
We hate this house.
Right. So, and it was like $270 for the initial treatment and then $140 per quarter after. And honestly, with the amount of panic I had, I'm kind of leaning towards putting all my properties on like a plan to get just a quarterly spray down, or figuring out the chemical that they use and just spraying my house.
Yeah, just watch them do it the first time and then just take a picture of it.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. That makes more sense. I'm not spending that much money. But so that was crazy, and like I'd say that's on the top of like some of the worst stuff that could happen, but grateful Jordan was there and communicated with me.
Caught the bugs.
They said that they were in 3 of the 4 bottom windows. And the person who sold it to me, he said that whoever sold this place to you knew about these because he had like caulked up the windows like where they had chewed through before. And I was like, that son of a bitch. But at the same time, I got a good deal. And he said like it wasn't like an extensive damage. He didn't feel that he needed to start ripping open drywall and stuff like that. So I'm cool, I'm calm, collected. And it was funny, I had the conversation with him. I started talking to the termite guy for like an hour because he owns rental properties in Hellertown, and we just hit it off. So we're talking about it, and I was like, look, like I had a home inspection done. What are they doing in a home inspection? I pay an extra $100 for them to check for termites. What are they doing to check? And he was like, most people, like, it's just the visual tubes, but it's like where to look is what you're paying for. And I was like, so there's no testing that they're doing to actually like
determine if there's termites.
Right. It's just
looks good to me, bud.
Right. And we all know home inspections are not warranties. If they say there's no termites and I buy the house and it's full of termites,
is what it is.
It is what it is. And that's the thing with the home inspection. Like I'm a big proponent of them just for leverage in your deal and to become familiar if you don't know everything about a house.
And they're not like, in the grand scheme of things, they're pretty cheap.
Right. But at the same time, it's just not the Bible. It's not this like set in stone, okay, he said I'm good, or he said I'm not good.
But the inspection report says no termites, so I'm just going to ignore them now.
Right.
It's just not, that's not what that is. But Yeah, I don't think I did termites for this place. I just did like the cheapest inspection option
It's
I
full of
could.
termites, dude.
Dude, no, I got stone walls.
I got termite on this one.
Really?
Yeah, even after having this conversation, because I asked the inspection company like what, and he said that they've got their licenses for termites, and like I believe it, they know where to look for them. And
well, like say we walked through this whole house looking at everything during the inspection. If he like saw some signs of termites, he's like, well, he didn't check that box, so I'm not gonna tell him.
And that's what I was kind of like. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm getting scammed out of $100, but whatever. It's part of it. And again, like it's not the end of the world. The sky's coming out, and we're gonna be all right.
You got bugs, deal with it.
Got some bugs, and we're gonna deal with it.
Bada bing, bada boom. But with that, that's all we got for you guys this episode. So if you got any information about Airbnb, if you've had some personal experience with it, you got some extra data, some different points that we didn't even think of, or information, or anything that could help us out, definitely let us know. We'd really appreciate any info you got on that. So with that, you guys have a great night.
Peace.